Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN Weekly for Saturday, May 30th, 2020. And our top story today, tips to get you back on track with restarting your business post-COVID-19. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is author and innovation expert Val Wright. Val, thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
It's great to be here.
It's awesome, and I see beautiful sunny Los Angeles behind you. How's LA treating you during this very challenging time?
We are adhering to our safer at home guidelines and learning how to adjust to our new reality.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because you just authored a new book, Review, Reset, and Relaunch. And this couldn't come at a more perfect time. So many of us, really, the states begin to open up around the United States, are relaunching ourselves. And I want to dive into this and get your thoughts about what is our best approach if we're a small business owner, a large business owner, running a not-for-profit organization. How do we relaunch ourselves and our businesses after this difficult time?
Yes, it's essential to think about how you quickly go through those phases of review, reset, and relaunch. Because it's interesting, I wrote the book and it's come out and been launched, and everyone's saying, you must have written this knowing that this was going to happen, Val. I'm like, I didn't. But what the book was for is, it's called Rapid Growth Done Right for a reason, because even in a crisis, you can grow rapidly. You just need to do it in the right way. And depending on where your listeners are joining us from, they may have different views of what's happened in the world, depending on whether they've personally been impacted, either financially or, within their own health or those of their loved ones. And so there's nuance to this that isn't as simple as, hey, there's this template, now go do it and it will work for you. What you have to do is, the review phase is truly looking at yourself and your revenue and your life and say, how much has this impacted me? The reset period is this kind of like interim middle period that many people are in right now, saying, how do I adapt my business for right now? Because we can't travel as much, we can't go on holiday as much, we might not be able to leave our homes, or we might have to leave our homes because we're an essential worker. So there's a reset phase. And then you have to think about the relaunch phase, which is what happens when things start to adjust closer to how things used to be.
Yeah, really good point. And I love the fact that you discuss and mention that it really is independent and individual to the business, to the location you're in. I mean, we're going to see phase reopenings around the United States. So, whether it's in Maryland, my home state, or New Jersey, or all around this country. And so everyone's going to have to adapt. One thing, Val, that is, part of human nature is we are all very resistant to change, myself included. Just ask my wife. I, don't necessarily always want to change. But this pandemic, this renew and relaunch and reset really forces you to change. You have to adapt in order to succeed in the future.
It's very true. And there's a phrase in my book called champions adjust. So there's this incredible marketing executive called Julie Bernard, who I feature in the book. And she coined this phrase, champions adjust. And what you have to do as a leader or as a member of a team is you have to say what's changed, what was true today that might not have been true yesterday, that might change again in the future, and how do I adjust to what I know right now? And we're seeing this a lot with businesses who are able to make those adjustments fast. There's a client of mine here in Los Angeles, Belkin, who makes the wires and battery packs for your devices. Yep. They've adjusted. They've turned one of their factories in Rhode Island to make ventilators. There's another company in Los Angeles who used to make the marquees for big conferences and events and concerts. They've adjusted, and now they're making temporary wards for the local hospitals. And so there are ways that you can adjust that might actually serve your community or your customers or your employees in completely new ways.
Let's talk a little bit about we're Skyping together, and that's how we're connecting. And a lot of people who are fortunate enough to have their jobs, they may be furloughed, they may have reduced hours, but they're working remotely. This seems to be kind of the new paradigm a new way to engage each other, don't have the same sense of community. But do you think even post-pandemic that we're going to be telecommuting more, that we're going to be doing these things? Clearly, we're going to be social distancing, at least right out of the gate in this first phase. But going forward into the Q1 of next year and beyond, do you think that innovatingly speaking, we're going to be doing more of this back and forth?
Absolutely. I'm already seeing companies let go of real estate, reduce their office footprints, changing the way they think about hiring, developing, teaching. This week alone, I've done 4 different talks to many leaders and teams around the world in very different ways. And what I'm seeing is that companies are realizing it can be done. And there may have been people who said, teleworking won't work for us. This can't possibly work. We need people in the office. We need people present for all of our teamwork. And they're realizing that it is possible. But here's the danger. The danger is right now, the answer to everything is a Zoom call, a video call. That's dangerous. And what's happening is companies are just literally flipping what they used to do in an office or with their customers. And instead of saying, okay, come to conference room A, they're saying, come to Zoom call 5396. And that's a terrible way to lead when people are in their homes trying to manage their whole life, not just their work life. And what you actually have to do is you have to go and delete every single meeting that you have for the next 90 days. And you have to ask yourself, what is it I need to achieve in the next 90 days? For me personally, for my business, for my team. Now, how do I best get that done? And I guarantee you the answer isn't 9 till 5 back-to-back Zoom calls.
I think you bring up a really important point because every morning when I post our show to LinkedIn, I go through and look in the feed and I see nothing but webinars and Zoom calls. And I find it kind of curious that we're here, it's 2020, and you're doing live events and people are still doing webinars. And it's not to knock the webinar, but it's webinar after webinar, just feeling like you have to engage your audience, whether it's a client, a prospect, a partner, and you have to do it through what I consider to be antiquated, older technology. You bring up a really interesting point or point in your last response, and that is my concern is for the parents out there. Parents really have it tough in this pandemic. They have to not only do their jobs if they're fortunate enough to keep it, they got to maintain their relationship with their significant other, their partner. They've got to take care of their children. And now they have to be educators too. I really see that as being it's already challenging to be a parent, but it's even more challenging in today's circumstances.
Yes, and I say this from my own home where I have 10-year-old twin girls and a 12-year-old, and my husband works as well. So there are 5 of us every day fighting for internet bandwidth and running between our rooms and figuring out how we live our lives and teach our girls and try and stay sane throughout all of this. Yeah. And I think there's 3 things that are really important. The first is, whether you are dealing with this yourself or whether you're leading a team, is you have to acknowledge it's okay to not be okay. Like, this is hard. Yeah. And for all of the delightful checklists and schedules, or, I just learned Italian and I'm doing food tasting at home. Like, you get this kind of like joyous image sometimes from people who are able to do amazing things. Not everybody is having an incredible time from this. And you've been able to talk about that with your kids or with your elderly relatives or, whatever else is going on in your life, being able to acknowledge, like, this is difficult and it's different. And certainly I'm hearing from a lot of the executives and the leadership teams I'm working with, there's a new conversation happening right now about the reality of the emotional toll of all of this. And one of the things that, I'm delighted that, my publisher, Kogan Page, decided to go ahead and publish my book and not delay it like many have until like next year, is what the book Rapid Growth Done Right does is it gives you a toolkit of how to communicate. It gives you a toolkit of new ways to come up with ideas. It gives you a toolkit of how to connect with people and build relationships. And that's true for your whole life, not just your work life.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really important point that is often just pushed away, and that is the mental health. A lot of people, I mean, I work from home, but clearly I'm a social person. I want to interact with people. My wife is here as well, so we can interact with each other. But I can tell you, I'm on her last nerve at this point. She actually took a stroll around the property. But that mental health really going to be critical as we acclimate to whatever phase one looks like in people's respective regions and going back to work. Maybe not being able to be side by side with our colleagues. That's almost like a loss. It's almost in a way similar to death. It's kind of loss, renewal and rebirth.
It absolutely is. And being able to have that conversation with your partner, with your kids, with your aging relatives, with your teams, and saying, what are we missing right now?
Yeah.
And being okay talking about, look, there are many graduates who are going to be graduating schools and colleges in a really different way. Let's talk about what they're missing and mourn that loss. And similarly, people who've had, tragic impact, whether it's through COVID-19 or another issue, how you bring that conversation and allow people to feel comfortable saying, hey, I need some help right now. Or, it's okay to talk about this, and being able to connect with people one-on-one. And, there's a theme that I talk about and share some examples, one of empathy. There's some good case studies in my book around, being an empathetic leader is important. And, what I see, I don't know whether you see this in, when you talk to some people, you kind of feel like you've landed in France and you're trying to talk Japanese. And someone just, it's like there's this lost in translation moment. And, in companies, that's often between creative, technical, or business people. So like the technical person might be explaining an idea and, the creative marketing genius kind of like glazes over. When you get that glaze over moment, you need to stop and say, hey, I think I've lost you here. Let me explain my intent. Let me explain what I'm trying to do here. And the more that individuals can like dive in and help with what I call this translation, you're going to help your communication, whether it's with your partner, your teenager, or someone you're working with.
Yeah, I think people are going to have to go into this very open-minded, and they should certainly check out your book. Val Wright, always a pleasure checking with you. Appreciate you sharing a few minutes of your time and insights in your book. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you very soon.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Val. Great to see you. Thanks for sharing your perspective. And when we come back, we'll take a look at our best segments of the week right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America, and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. On Tuesday, I sit down with Prudential Financial's Harry D'Alessio to talk about some of the critical gaps in savings as a result of the coronavirus. Let's take a look.
Everybody's doing well. You know, I think from an overall company perspective, we've been around a long time, 145 years. So we've gone through a lot over those 145 years, although this is relatively unique, I think, for everybody, even thinking back to our history. But we went all virtual relatively quickly, staying engaged with our customers. And I think associates have really stepped up and gone above and beyond over the last couple of months as we all settle into this new normal, whatever it kind of is and becomes. But overall, good. Appreciate you asking. And, we're continuing to move forward. The concept of short-term savings, midterm savings, long-term savings overall. So 63, depending on the study, high 67, 68, 69% of Americans don't have $1,000, in their savings account. 63% don't have $500 to handle a common emergency, flat tire, car broke down, need a new washer, dryer, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, as we go through these types of, economic cycles, and this one's unique because it's both a health and an economic cycle at the same time, it really puts a spotlight on where some of the challenges are as it relates to saving across each of those dimensions. So as we think about it at Prudential, a couple of years ago, we were the first to roll out an emergency savings vehicle, which was a sidecar essentially embedded in your defined contribution plan that you could save for emergencies through payroll deduction and a post-tax savings vehicle. And as we come out of this crisis potentially, it's really going to put a spotlight on, and I think has put a spotlight on, the totality of the needs of individuals as they prepare for their financial journey, their financial wellness over the course of their lifetime. It's not just, I need to save for retirement. It's not just, I need to have an emergency savings account. I need to save for college education. I need to pay down debt, et cetera. The last several years, the confluence of events and the holistic view around an individual's financial life has really kind of come to bear. And as we go through this type of market environment, it certainly puts a spotlight on the need to be well prepared for your long-term savings and retirement destination that you want to get to, as well as how do I save for short-term needs, emergencies, both positive, negative, that I don't have to kind of tap into my retirement account when the need arises as it relates to overall cash flow. So emergency savings has gotten a lot of attention over the last 2 months, as well as a whole host of other areas that we could kind of get into as the conversation goes along. First and foremost, similar to what we're doing, they're caring for their employees first. They're thinking about their customers second, and then everything else kind of comes third overall. So many of the conversations we've had with our clients has really been, they've been all hands on deck, certainly depending on what industry they're in, as it relates to helping protect and support their employees, as well as supporting their customers, and then thinking in terms of where their business goes from here and what's the next step on their journey, given there's certainly plenty of challenges that organizations are facing today. A number of the conversations we've had recently have been very, very interesting from the standpoint of our industry has been very slow to keep pace with really the consumerization of the economy. So you think about all the personal sites you go to, retail sites, et cetera, 1-2 clicks, paperless, intuitive, et cetera. And the retirement industry in a lot of places is still kind of paper driven, some manual processes, fulfillment face to face versus digital. So we've heard a few things from customers. One, the need to collect more email addresses and mobile numbers so we could communicate with their employees via mobile or via email, direction, which is far greater than where many were willing to go a few months ago. The second is far more paperless than what it was like before, given certainly the environment we're in. Many people don't want to kind of touch or open up their mail for obvious reasons. I think third is, how do we expand the platform as it relates to financial wellness for our employees? So if you go back 5 years ago, everything was siloed. I had my 401k plan, I had my savings account, I had a student loan, I was saving for college education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we thought about that and worked with a lot of our employers as well on, here's our silo, here's our swim lane that we're working in. We are focused on getting people to save for retirement through their workplace plan. Now there's a recognition, both with the confluence of financial wellness gaining more and more attention over the last few years, and we've been a big driver of that at Prudential, but also second, going through the financial crisis in COVID has created a confluence of events where customers are now recognizing, I need to help my employees solve for many of their financial opportunities and challenges that are in front of them at the workplace, because they trust their employer, they trust through the workplace. And that's where we see the packaging of, student loan assistance, debt management counseling, one-on-one financial counseling with, obviously saving for retirement, emergency savings as it relates to more short-term. So many employers across all the spectrums that you described, both, government entities, 403B, for-profit, not-for-profit healthcare, as well as, varying industries in the corporate market, all are focused on, how do I improve my employees' holistic financial well-being through the workplace, because we're best suited to put that offering together, and who could I work with to do that? So I think that's an immediate discussion that's happening. The momentum was building, and I think coming out of this, there will be much more attention as it relates to it, because you've probably seen these stats that, if a majority of your employees are spending 1 to 2 hours a week and some, an hour a day focused on financial stress, it impacts health and welfare, it impacts productivity on the job, it impacts engagement. The downstream effects are massive. And many retirement plan sponsors are really looking at much of the behavioral health research and studies that have kind of come through the retirement industry to really leverage that to help make their workforce more productive in a whole host of ways. And that's exciting. For me personally, having been in this industry for a long time, the transformation that's happening in the retirement industry, the transformation that's happening as it relates to this financial wellness, holistic well-being of employees is the most exciting that I've seen. And I think the potential is huge. And I think we're just scratching the surface, and will have a real bottom line impact, both on individual employees, which translates to families, which translates to community, society, and certainly their employers along the way. So, many exciting things happening in a certainly challenging environment.
And on Wednesday, I was joined by Cornerstone Cleaning's Beth Derrickson to talk about how disinfecting and sanitizing and cleaning have taken on all new meanings. Let's take a look.
When I was very young, my grandmother always had us cleaning, and it was very rewarding because you saw the end product, and she made it fun. We did it together, so it was something that I always enjoyed and looked back to. And when I was in record keeping for so many years, I finally got to a point where I was like, you know what, I think I want to do something different. And my husband and I sat down, and he said, you know what, you were happiest when you were cleaning. I had actually cleaned to get through college. So I thought, well, let me give this cleaning company a go. And I started with just a few clients on my own. And then I had a waiting list. One of my neighbors contacted me and said, my daughter looking for some part-time work. Would you be interested in bringing her on? So I did that, and after about 2 to 3 weeks, we started getting down our waiting list. More people were adding on to the waiting list, and she's like, hey, my friend wants to come aboard. Can we bring her in, try her out? And I said, sure, let's do it. And it's just really snowballed from there. And we love working for our clients, making their days easier, seeing the end result at the end of the day. Yeah. We also do donation cleanings to women undergoing cancer treatment. So that's been very rewarding. And my whole thing about getting into that program, it's through our affiliation with Cleaning for a Reason, was that my grandmother had passed from cancer. So it kind of, as we were talking before the program started, things always had to make full circles, and it definitely did. And that really has been something that we love to do. We do fundraising for them. So we're cleaning, we're helping families, we're helping patients, and we're fundraising. So we're out there trying to make the world better in terms of sanitization and cleaning. It's made us more successful financially, and I'm sure we'll talk about this today. The whole situation with COVID-19 and being in a position to continue to have our doors open, continue to have employees coming in, continuing to be out there, you have to have that financial backing. And that's the one piece that I really love about my work, is the whole financial piece of it. The numbers never lie, so you really need to be aware of your numbers, and then you can decide how to make better decisions when it's just a day-to-day decision or it's a pandemic decision. Having those numbers and knowing them has really helped out. From the retirement perspective, one thing that I've always wanted to do was create a retirement plan for our employees. Up until this point, we haven't been in a position to do that. I actually just booked a meeting next month with our industry association. It's called ISSA, and they're having a webinar and an expert come in to talk about how to actually do that. And they have some programs, as a group in our industry, it'll be more economical as a business owner to have a group plan and have options to provide to our employees. So we're at a point where we are being recognized as an essential business, essential workers, essential employees, and we really need to give back to our employees in that regard. We had to shift gears fairly quickly, like many other companies and families. We had split our time in the office. So Becky Abbott works for me in the office, and her and I split time between the office and working remotely. That was a big adjustment, just because we also, while our teams are out cleaning, we have to make sure they have the right supplies. So we typically were out and about a lot more than we had been, doing quality checks, putting supplies in our closets at different places of work. So we had to shift a great deal in that. And working from home has been a little bit different, because you now instead of it just being you at the computer, you might have a spouse at home or a college student or a high school student or just a student in general home, and you have to figure out how that's all going to work with the computers, the bandwidth. So it was definitely an adjustment for the office. For the team members, I'm really blessed. Our team members are very engaged in their job. They picked up a lot. Like, they will come in, they'll get their supplies, they'll know what they need. They grab their folders for the day. They didn't really skip a beat in terms of just being on autopilot when all this happened, because we were always in the office all at the same time.
Right.
We did that on purpose. We wanted to distance ourselves, but then too, it's just the timing of everyone coming in and out. We have people that work evening and weekends. We have people that work daytime. So it definitely was an adjustment, but we were able to handle that. And now that we're starting to pick back up, Governor Hogan lifted 5 p.m. today, lifted some of the restrictions. So now that we're starting to pick back up, we're already executing on our plan to be back in the office, start back up our client visits, and just trying to get back to normal as much as possible.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. But as you know, we're not done for the week, because tomorrow, members of the media, academia, and financial services all come together to analyze all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and more on the BRN Sunday podcast. You're not going to want to miss it. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.